All right, so I'm here with the iconic Charlie Walk with WABC in New York, and we're going to talk about what it's like to have amazing big artists at big events, big experiences. And, you know, your background, it couldn't be better for this topic. Why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are, why I'm saying these things?
I think you're saying it because I came out of my mama's belly screaming for music and wanting to hear hits and be on a stage. I knew at a very early age that I wasn't going to be a dentist like my father. I call it that star chip, right? So
Right.
I'm the artist behind the artist, but I knew very, very early on that I had this thing that I had to accomplish. So I was a tortured soul most of my childhood. But no, I started very early working, in the music business as an intern, which is pretty much the only way to get in at that
So
time.
your title's been president for a bunch of very prestigious record labels.
Right.
But would you consider yourself more a manager, an agent? Like, where do you fall? How would artists look at you?
They call me like the artist behind the artist, because I create and help them sort of carry out their vision. But we think very entrepreneurially, and also don't forget every new artist is a startup.
Right.
You think about that, right?
Right.
So it's when you started your company, of course, right?
So then would that make you like a promoter then?
I think that would make me someone that helps create the vision, carry out the vision, define the vision, the brand, and then we do all the touch points, which starts with A&R, and what you look like, what you sound like, how you're going to define your core and carry it out, where you're going to break from, and of course, you have to market and promote. If you don't promote, nothing happens. But before you get to the whole promotion and marketing push, you have to really have an artist that is ready for that, right? So and then they also have to want it, because it's a 365-day-a-year job. You can't want it more than the artist, and it gets tricky when you're the one behind the artist, and they're not going to want his work. They don't want to work as hard as they need to compete, with the other big stars that are out there that are just
Right.
killing it.
And speaking of big stars, the list of stars that you've worked with is huge, and it spans so many generations and so many different genres of music. That's what I find fascinating, because so many people specialize in the industry, and yet you can pick a big time artist, the next big hit maker in any genre. That's got to be a super amazing ear. I don't know what you got. Maybe you can tell me what you got. But that's amazing. But just to name some of the artists for the diversity, you got Aerosmith, you got Ariana Grande, you got Beyonce, you go back to Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, but then you've got some country like Florida Georgia Line, you got some Latin music like Enrique Iglesias, you got hip hop like Drake, you got the Jonas Brothers, I could just go on, but how do you do that? When you're first artist, right, with Backstreet Boys, so you're a little bit like Simon Cowell, even dress-wise right now, too, so.
Thanks for that. I like my black
like
t-shirts.
that, right?
I'm
Hey,
a little
he's
guy.
extremely successful.
I got to show my guns off.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate, and I've been lucky. So the label that I started at was Columbia Records, that we inherited, the catalog of a Bruce Springsteen, Aerosmith, Billy Joel, Barbra Streisand. But I was able to get to work with those artists that either needed a rebrand or had music coming out, and I was sort of the new kid on the block with other people to work with them, and I got to work with them intimately. And I think they looked at me as someone that maybe had a different sort of approach to helping them with my label mates. So that was like, it wasn't like I signed them. I came to a label and they were the heritage artists. They were the anchors of the mothership. But during that era, there was also the breaking of Mariah Carey. And my first artist that I was given to work with in Boston was New Kids on the Block. And I didn't realize, but they were the next boy band to break after the Beatles. There hadn't been like a boy band, quote unquote, from the United States.
And you were what, like 20
I think I was
then?
19 or 20 years old.
That's
yeah.
amazing.
And so the challenge was...
So you didn't go to university then?
I did. I was at Boston University getting a business degree while interning at CBS Records and working at a station called Kiss 108, which was the big pop portal. So what they played at Kiss 108 broke across America. There was only a few funnels, right, back then. Wasn't even MTV. There was no YouTube. There really wasn't an internet.
So you're a little bit like Steve Jobs or Zuckerberg, where you were at school, but you weren't really at school. Your real education was live at the studio.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, we got the business degree and we had the honors and GPA, but
I'm impressed
honestly,
you graduated with all the other stuff
trust
going
me,
on.
my mother, says a prayer for me every Christmas. I know I had to do that because if I were going to have kids, I'd want to say get a great education.
Right.
But my passion, I knew going into high school that if I didn't figure out the internship game of how to laser focus on the buckets to learn, I'd be in a tough position, not wanting to be an accountant or anything that sort of the schools offered.
Nobody wants to be an accountant. Nobody comes out of the womb and says, I want to count other people's money for a living.
Although I love my accountant.
You got to love your accountant. He's got to love you.
Show me, how to count. But I will say the experience that I got in the street, and it really was. And you got to understand, when an artist does start out, when I say startup, I'm not kidding. So no one cared about New Kids on the Block. We're in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I remember Donnie Wahlberg's home. I met the mom, and Mark Wahlberg was upstairs playing the drums, and there was no money. There was no one cared except a few of us. And then when you sort of help them with their journey and you come up with some marketing initiatives to break them regionally, which is what we did. It was a regional thing. Again, remember how there's no such thing as social media back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
You put something up and you can have people watching your stuff around the world. It was just like, if you're in Boston, you're in Boston. And if the local radio station's not playing it, what are you going to do to get attention? Right? So you're going to do pop-up. Pop-up is a word today. We did those type of club pop-ups, but it was about community and actual word of mouth. That helped break them. I remember 3 years later, we were in Miami at Joe Robbie Stadium, and we did 3 nights. I think we did 80,000 times 3, 240,000 people. They were doing like $80 a head in merch, and they all had their own tour buses. And you just sit there, and the thrill of that, and understanding you, amongst others, were a part of their journey to get to this global success, I think gave me even more gasoline, to really rev up my engines and stay on the course of I know how to do this. I think I can be really good at this.
As somebody that saw the industry and how it's evolved since the 80s, the 90s, then the millennium, the internet, has played a huge role in the last 20 years. You brought up social media. Is it a blessing? Is it a curse? Is it a little bit of both? What does the internet mean for music artists right now?
So I actually think it's a great thing for fiercely independent artists. They don't have to rely on anyone else except their content and their music and their art. And I will say, usually the best stuff somehow finds its way every single time. I would say stars are born, not made. They have that star chip. They figure it out. They're clever. And social media allows you to do that globally. So the DIY effect of sort of the market today allows artists to be more powerful, control their IP, their assets, their touring, their merch, their publishing, their recorded music, their masters. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a great thing. I think though it also distinguishes the difference between good and great. So you don't see a lot of good artists breaking. Right now, you see a lot of great. And those artists, you can, 17-year-old Billie Eilish
because they
is on fire
bubble
right
up,
now.
right?
They bubble up because...
You used a stat earlier. How many songs a day are loaded up on the internet?
All right, so it's a fascinating stat that no one really understands, and this will change. So if anyone hears this interview over and over again, you will think I'm an idiot because the number will be double at some point. So right now, there's 40,000 songs being uploaded daily. So that's 280,000 songs or so a week.
So you have a new project now, using all of your wealth of knowledge in the industry to help, emerging artists, called Music Mastery. Mm-hmm. And so is that part of the focus on how you separate yourself out from the 40,000 other songs a day?
Well, Music Mastery was created because of the fact that I wanted to give back. I wanted to create something that I could sort of own, that was proprietary, that was global, that speaks to what you just said. How do you help artists, creators, disruptors, people that want to be in the music business figure out sort of their own journey that they can customize from what I've learned over, 30 years, I guess. And that's what Music Mastery is. It's also a place where I believe we're going to discover talent worldwide. So as the brand grows and we end up doing Music Mastery Live, hopefully with you,
Yes.
And really go out there, we're going to put a stage in a room like this, a big stage, and sort of where the digital meets the physical, we're going to find some amazing stars that I will personally get involved with, like my team, treat it like a modern music company, and do some real-time case studies as we choose who can break. I'm not promising anyone with Music Mastery that we're going to make you famous, but we're going to make you better.
Right.
We're going to make you better.
It's interesting. So, our company, HotelPlanner, that I started 18 years ago, it does specialize in events, and we consider ourselves an event travel, technology platform. And we do 1.2 million groups through the platform a year. And so we love to hire the best of the best artists for all of our events, and I see the synergies there. So our wheels are both turning on how we can take these emerging artists and put income in their pockets, which they need, and to also give them exposure. So, as we collaborate, how would somebody who's putting on an event be able to figure out what kind of budget they need to work with, because we can't all afford the Mariah Careys and the J-Los of the world. What's your advice on that for somebody who's maybe starting out, wants to do a festival, or just wants to hire an amazing band for their wedding, and their budget is reasonable, say $250,000 for a wedding. That's a lot, but there's a lot of people spending $1 million and up on weddings these days. And so they say, I can afford $25,000 for, an artist to come and perform. What would you think would fit into that budget, and how should they determine what that artist should be?
Well, first of all, there's something called Polestar, which can show you where everyone is traveling at a certain period of time, usually over a year or so. You can look ahead. So you want to match your date and your city to maybe where the likely artist that could possibly do it would be. Costs will be a little bit less if they're already playing that city and they have the band and production in town. Does that make sense, right?
Right.
So you may be able to get a discounted rate. If it's a complete one-off, artists like to get paid. Some like to fly private. So it really depends upon the act and the level they're at. If they're off cycle and they don't have a hit going on right now, right? The hit, that current hit that gives you that relevancy, that immediate relevancy rides that price up, because everyone wants to sing the current song that's out, But I think it really is a case by case scenario. You have to start off with who you want and what your budget is, and then sometimes along the way it is about the relationship.
So that's a good point. So start locally then, right? Like look at. If you're in Cleveland and, MGK is your local artist, he's probably in LA shooting a movie these days, but just assume that he's back at home. If you had a $25,000 budget, when he usually wants $250,000 or something like that, but because, he's local and he might not have something going on that day, you could reach out to his people and say, let's make a deal.
Well, I think it's getting ahead of it, so getting ahead of their schedule to lock them in. And you also just want to see, where their tour is. Are they touring, and how do you plug into that tour? Artists today love privates. They actually, in some cases, make more money doing privates around the world than the money they make on tour. Touring with their lights and sound and production sometimes ends up being a break-even thing, along with their merch, depending upon the artist, how many trucks they have, et cetera, et cetera. But the private gigs for A-list, B-list artists is exponential, and the artists want to do it because it's pure profit, right?
And it's guaranteed money.
So, for example, you pick an artist. I signed a kid named Sean Kingston. We helped create this island pop star named Sean Kingston in 2006, I think, or 2007. And part of the gig was he had a song called Beautiful Girls. Right. And we rode that for 2 years, and we got a piece of profit from the Sean Kingston 360 deal, which 360 means we're getting a piece of all the different buckets of dollars that come in. And, at that point, $75,000, $100,000. When it sort of slowed down a bit, $50,000. When it got really slow, $25,000. Sort of like the hit meter. The wave of that drove the price to a certain degree. But he would walk in.
So if you were...
But by the way, he would walk in with a DJ and play the track. Mm-hmm. And the expenses were first-class airfare, the limo or the SUV, and the DJ.
Right.
So a lot of these private events don't necessarily require, right? Because you have so much going on. You don't really care. You want the artist to come up and sing a couple of songs, and it's okay if they leave after, and they don't have to have the full arena production. So, but they're going to charge you. The good news is they're going to charge you less. They're going to give you a quick show in and out. You're going to get what you need for your brand or for your wedding or bar mitzvah or whatever it may be. So there's a commonality that I think the purchaser of the performance or the performer shares. But it's getting ahead of it in advance, looking at their schedule, and sometimes having a relationship with the agent or manager. So if you're someone at HotelPlanner, for example, that books a ton of stuff, if you don't have a relationship at WME or CAA at this point, it's a little silly because you can have go-to guys. They're going to be able to figure out a way over time. If you're spending $2 million a year for global live events, you're going to get that 10 or 15% discount off the bat. And then you end up being friends with managers and stuff. It's a very small business of a few managers actually manage the top 10 artists in the world.
So if that's your artist and you see ticket sales weaning a little bit, they've been on the road too long, do you take them off the road and put them back in the studio, or do you try to get them to record from the road? Is it easier for an EDM, artist to do that than, a rock band to record while they're traveling?
I don't think there's a formula. I think every artist records either on the road or a studio they're comfortable with. When I talked about Billie Eilish before she made the record at her house. There's something called bedroom pop now. A lot of these kids are making the records in their house and on their computers.
But that's how Avicii started, right?
Yeah, and then, they have GarageBand. They're making the records and they sound great. Mm-hmm. So every artist is different. And a lot of artists really aren't using live instruments when they make their records. So it makes it much more portable, like you just said. But there's no formula for it. The truth of the matter is every artist is their own brand, their own DNA, and they decide when they feel the cycle coming and going. Some just keep on putting out music, like Drake's a guy that seems to always be in cycle and putting out records. And some artists you haven't heard from in a minute. And that could be for various reasons. Some artists that don't write have to chase hits, chase songs, and we have to get them songs to listen to, and they have to make a decision if they want to sing that song. And then there's other artists that, are writing their own music. And sometimes when they get writer's block, they're not writing music. So every artist has their own. The beautiful thing about the music business and the artists in it is, first of all, great can happen at every time, and you don't know when it's going to happen.
Well, going back to music mastery, writer's block, what's your cure for that?
I think it's about experience. I was talking to Billy Joel a few years ago, and I said, when did you stop? We had lunch on Long Island, and I said, when did you stop writing records? And he said, I got too rich. And what he meant was, he became very successful. So the stories of heartache and the stuff he used to write and relationship breakthroughs, he's got kids and he's got a wife and life's great. And so I think upon success, you see a lot of artists that thing that got them there, they don't have anymore. That angst, those lyrics, those universally relatable emotional lyrics that affect everyone, they seem to dissipate upon success. That's the biggest problem and challenge when an artist that sort of wrote a certain way becomes successful. They have to sort of revamp their thought process on and not to be commercially successful, but just to sort of be able to continue what they've done to be on brand for the audience that they created. It's very, very hard. The pressure on an artist, once they have success, to churn out hits or successful music is beyond intense.
So what band would you say has done that the best of spanning music over generations? I'd throw out a name like Metallica. Obviously, it has a lot to do with the band all staying together, all of them staying healthy, which is a whole nother problem onto itself. But which band would you put out there to say, these guys are just an amazing machine, such great chemistry, and can stay relevant?
It's not just guys, it's girls. There's Madonna, there's U2. I mean, you can look, Bruce Springsteen is incredible the way he takes time off and then does a Broadway show, and then now he just announced he's going to do E Street Band again and go on tour. So he understands his cycle of, Steve Perry from Journey taught me one line, how can I miss you if you never go away? Mm-hmm. Isn't that smart? And that's how Journey lasted for so many years before they didn't like each other anymore. I think Bruce sort of does that. He sort of does different projects and then lets the band take a break and then comes back, and it's the most incredible album and show ever. Imagine if he just did E Street all day long. It would probably get stale for him, which is why he
how
does
does
what
the
he
artist
does.
not burn out on their hits? Because, we as fans all want to hear the classics.
I
but-
think it's part of the game. I saw Fleetwood Mac play at Madison Square Garden a month ago, and what we wanted to hear? The hits.
Yeah.
What we pay for? The hits.
Like
You know
the
how they
Stones.
profit? The hits. Rolling Stones play the hits.
Yeah.
As much as they're probably sick of doing those records, you're talking
What's
about
a trick you can teach
$1
an
million
artist
or $2 million nights?
to still appreciate the hits?
Well, the trick is to keep on writing and mixing the hits with some new music. And I think with streaming and the powerful way you can put music out every day, every Friday is New Music Friday. More is more by putting music out over and over again and allowing yourself to
Could you also
express
do what like
yourself.
The Dead does, where you kind of mix it up? You take a classic, but you
Well, think
you
about that.
add
Think
to
about why
it.
that works. People want that.
Yeah.
I think people want to go to a show at the end of the day when you think about mass scale and singing the songs, right? You don't want to go to a show and just sit there and hear stuff you don't know. You want to kind of, maybe have a glass of wine or a beer and listen to, not just listen, but be a part of the experience. We were speaking before about experience. The whole game today is, I think, you have this cell phone, this mobile device that seems to be everyone's best friend today, and you looking at it, you're posting at it, and my hands are probably warped from it. And this is the transformation of this mobile device back to experience. We spoke in the phone earlier, but isn't it better to be in person and actually have a conversation and get more out of me and feel the emotion? I think it's all going to go back to that, about creating incredible experiences with these artists, around the world, retreats, the live music experience is more powerful than ever. I think it becomes embedded further so into culture because we're dying for it, right? We have this need to be together and be it something that gives you those goosebumps and that emotional feel that the mobile device just can't do. And I'm trying to I don't do drugs, but I'm definitely a phoneaholic. I'm a social media holic. I've got a problem that I think I got to deal with it.
Well,
and I
there's
fight it
studies
every
coming
day.
out.
I'm
that
sure
social
I am
media
one. I am one.
has addictive qualities. They actually
a
use the
problem.
way that the lights go off and it buzzes. It's the same indicators that they use for gambling when you play a slot machine. So these are indicators that set certain parts of your brain that have that addiction. They did it on purpose. I mean, they studied how do casinos do it to keep people addicted to the slot machines, and how can we use those same signals onto social media. So when you get a tweet or somebody likes this and it pops up on your phone and it buzzes and the light goes off at the same time, that's that positive reinforcement that you get, and it releases endorphins. So your analogy of social media like a drug, it's spot on, because
true.
it was developed to do just that by some really smart people in Silicon Valley. They knew what they were doing. They did the studies and they pushed it out.
I'll
exactly
tell
like
you
they
this.
should.
The other night, and I think I'm a great father, and I was talking to my son about college, and as he's talking, I feel like my body's shifting towards the phone, my arms, I just want to look at my Instagram, see who DM'd me. And I looked in the mirror and I said, I got a problem. I have a social media problem. And it's funny, but it's not. I think we get so addicted to it. Now, for me, I need to communicate with an audience. I need to communicate with the music mastery audience, and it's a global thing for me. So I take it seriously. I take it personally. So it's always sort of like a third arm. But you have to be able to not have that drink, right? And we're not going to drink tonight. We're not going to have a Chardonnay tonight.
Where
not gonna
where
use
it's
that
tough
phone tonight.
is because drinking falls into business as exactly as social media does. Is that drink because you want it, or is that drink because, well, I have to because I have to go to this social event? And
100%.
if I'm at the social event with my clients, am I pressured to do as everybody else because I don't want to be a bad time? And the same thing is true with social media. It's now your job, right? You've got to feed your followers, and your followers then, because especially for your artists, and that's got to be tough for them, because are they concentrating on their art, on their music, or are they concentrating on their followers and some?
I will go deeper with you right now. This is an exclusive. This is a HotelPlanner.com exclusive. So For me, I have to, every morning I have something called Close Friends. It's a membership at Music Mastery Instagram. And I curate it every morning, get up at 5, and I'm looking for articles and videos and stuff that I study that come through me, and then I put it out into this private community that people pay for. And it's my curation. It's mine that I give to you. And it's a great product, and people love it. And when I think about that, I have to do that every morning. If you think about that, 7 days a week. And as that, I have to communicate with these people. And if I stop doing it, they're disappointed. So I have that sort of constant pressure of, number one, am I feeding the beast properly? Am I feeding my community the right way? And if I'm letting them down if I don't. And that's a big responsibility as it relates to the process of what we do and the way we communicate. So I'm figuring it out, but I do think what I find that people want more than ever, I think everyone's sort of on the same wavelength as us. People are getting crisp. People are getting a little bit crispy on these phones, even your eyes and your fingers, and you get the carpal tunnel and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm fighting for events. I'm fighting to travel. And again, it plugs into what you do, which it's interesting what you do and the way you have people in hotels and events around the world. I think sort of what I'm talking about, if you can provide, before they go to bed or before they check in, or in the space and place they're in, that experience, that unforgettable experience, well, that's more powerful than ever, right? It's that added value that allows people to connect and network and be with, like-minded people.
Yeah, the term you used, feed, you got to feed the followers. It's like you got to feed the habit. And it reminds me of Pink Floyd's The Wall album, which is now 50 years old, still a classic, though. He talks about another brick in the wall. Are you just another brick at the wall, then just feeding the machine, which is the internet? Because it's content-less, and nobody cares about the internet unless you feed it. Just like those 40,000, artists are loading up their songs every day.
Nobody cares.
They're feeding the internet. Somebody cares because it's keeping everybody connected.
Well, nobody cares until somebody cares. That's the point, right? Of feeding the beast, or feeding the frenzy of your music, or pushing out to try to grab your first fans. But at the beginning, no one cares, and really no one does care until you do something that's clever, for better or worse, hopefully for better, that makes people pay attention to whether you're an artist or whether it's, something that affects culture, art-wise, commerce-wise, visually, that, sort of attracts you, or just a lot of these influencers that are doing some of the, my kids watch YouTube. There's no cable. They're watching their network is called YouTube in their bedrooms.
Yep, Amazon Prime, Netflix.
And it's destination programming, meaning they don't even, they know the name brand of a show, but they don't even know the network anymore, if that makes sense. So friends of ours watch Billions, right? I'm sure you're familiar with Billions. I think you're on the show. And Billions is on Showtime. So we have a subscription for $10 a month for Showtime. Why? Because Billions is on it. We don't think about, it's on Showtime. We think about Billions, right? Or Game of Thrones. Where's that, HBO?
Yeah.
Another $10.
Didn't
That's
know
$20.
that either.
So now, before you add it up, you're like, it's more than cable was at $300 a pop. So it's a very interesting time when you think about, like, TV shows and films and documentaries become sort of their own branded entertainment. Artists of their own brands. They're startups that grow into something that affects people in the whole ecosystem of the artist, by eventually going back to what you were saying, playing live. And is that live a public event, or is it a private event? And I think the private side of what you were talking about is, I believe the numbers can be bigger than sort of the arena numbers if you really want to do it. Jennifer Lopez, I mean, she's traveling the world.
So going back to that, to solve the problem, the biggest problem in that space is, how does the group coordinator get in touch with the artist? It's one of the hardest things. And that Fyre Festival, people with the Fyre app, was trying to solve that problem. And we all know how that crashed and burned. But it was a tangible problem that they were trying to solve. Is somebody else going to come in and fill that space and solve it? Or does an artist naturally always want to stay independent? It's the part of the mystique of it is the chase. Oh, you got to call my agent. No, you got to call my manager. And
No. It's about the money.
Yeah, but you still just even
it's
getting
not
in
about
touch
the
with
money.
them.
It's about the money, and you can get in touch if you have the money. Number one, and number two, as far
So
as
you're just going to call up CAA?
well, as I said, you have to know the managers of the agents, and the agents get 10%. So yes,
Right.
now they get paid 10%. They're 10%ers. They get 10% of gross of the order. So they're going to take your call if you have money. They're going to say, send me an offer. And if there's a real offer, you're going to get a call back. And if there's not a real offer, you're not. And that's basically how it's been. But I will say the festival experience is more powerful and important than ever. The festival you just spoke about, the Fry, whatever they call it, it looked great, right? It looked amazing. You're flying on the plane into this beautiful island, and the food and the tents. I think the spirit of it was right, and I think there will be actually something like that, but it's going to have to be, something that's ironclad and proven that it's a real thing as opposed to something that really could have never happened in the first place.
Didn't it really show the ugly side of the internet on so many levels? Not just the fact that they had aspirations of becoming this great transparency marketplace for artists and people that wanted to book artists, but also the unrealistic expectations that you can paint on the internet now. And then when the people actually buy what you're trying to sell and they're disappointed on an epic scale like that, it's horrible. It shows the ugly side of the internet. What would be your advice on how to combat that? How does the younger generation or anybody in business make sure that they set reasonable expectations and so they always, make sure the consumer is happy?
I think it's about transparency and having an honest conversation with your friends and or the people you're communicating with. I think it's gotten. If you look at, if I look at half the people that I follow, it's everyone's having a really good time. Do you understand what I mean by that? There's no.
It's all a facade, yeah.
It's all make believe. So make believe, right? And I think that's a problem because that behind that show or the stage that they're on, we're not getting a sense of real life. And I think, if there's anything I could try to teach is like I went on yesterday and I just sort of did reflections on my stories for my close friends. And I got so many comments back how honest. My hair was a mess. And because I had just woken up and I just was feeling and I spoke how I felt, and people wrote back. You could see the connectivity and the messaging back to me as opposed to some of the glossy stuff I put up. And I put up a lot of glossy stuff. We're selling the dream.
That doesn't engage followers.
I think it just becomes like wallpaper.
Right.
And by the way, I'm learning every day. I am not perfect. I am learning every day to have more honest conversation, to really see what an artist or people around me want to hear or what inspires them. And maybe sometimes what I think inspires them isn't necessarily something that actually helps them. So I'm learning to pivot and move and it's care a little bit more and be a little more sensitive to what the truth is, as opposed to this shiny, glossy screen. By the way, every picture, I'm looking and I can just see the face is mangled and there's no more lines and I'm even a victim of it. But I'm trying to shift that to have a little bit more of an honest, authentic conversation with. It's not even my followers, but the people that are in my core.
So we talked about the marketing side of the internet, but let's move on to the e-commerce side, the actual transaction. So I would have to ask you, as you were on the forefront of music and the business model moving online, did you fight back against the iTunes of the world? Where was your stance on all of that when that was going on? Did you feel like it was fair for the artists or when they're getting?
I said something in 2007 in Esquire magazine that I actually posted today. I was one of the first guys to say that streaming would fix the music business and make it the most profitable form of entertainment in the world. This was in 2007. I also, and I'm telling you guys this for a reason, I was also Spotify's number 11 user when they turned on. I was number 11. So I was in this thing. And my point about it is not that I'm a visionary, but there was a real problem back in the day with music was free. Napster's anniversary is actually today. It's 20th anniversary. And what happened was your product, artist product that you put out was free. So the commerce side of it went to zero. So we were selling CDs, right?
So you felt then when iTunes started selling for $1 was better than no dollars.
Because.
But don't you still think that's too little, though?
Well, it was 99 cents. Hold on, it was 99 cents a song and $10 for an album. And
nobody buys albums anymore.
I'm just saying back in the day, it was 99 cents for a song, or $9.99 for an album, which could be locked, and there was no packaging. So if you think about it, there was no more packaging and shipping. And those costs alone drove a CD back in the day to $17.99, $18.99.
So you're saying that the artist is wealthier now because of the internet?
Depending upon their deal. I think that if you're an artist that just has a distribution deal, of course. If you're an artist that's signed too early to a major, the deal's probably not in your favor. But if you're an artist that's created leverage, and this is what I say to everyone, if you're an artist that's created leverage for yourself, you can carve out the best deal in the world if you want to make a deal with a major, because you've already created that leverage that shows that somebody likes you.
And is that what you're going to teach people to do?
Yeah,
at Music Mastery?
I'm going to help identify, hopefully, a few artists we're going to work with and sign along the way. But for the ones that I can't get to as one man, as one guy, we're going to try to, as a group, sort of give our launch codes and our proprietary sort of information and thought process to have them apply sort of living, breathing thoughts to help them get there faster and have less fails, right, from experience. The thing that we did with the Music Mastery is it's not like a textbook, and it's just, part of it's a 6-week course. But I'm adding modules throughout the year. It doesn't end after 6 weeks. Right? You pay your money and then you're done like everybody else. No. You have me every Monday night. Wherever I am, I'm going to be on Google Hangout or Zoom speaking to the community. Q&A. So yes, you're not getting me one-on-one, but you're going to get me as more than you're going to get anybody else that's willing to have a conversation with you because you're part of my community.
So
I'm a part of your community.
Agent, you're their manager, you're their promoter, all wrapped in one for $9.99 a month.
Oh man, it's so much more than that. But I think over a year, though, I'm your confidant. We're your guide to just help you be able to refer back to our modules and our program, but also see you out there on the road. And I'd like to really have a stage in every major city when I come in. It's the opposite of X Factor or Idol or America's Got Talent. It's something that I think is more authentic, where we can give people the chance to, especially artists and even people that want to be behind the artists or managers or writers, we can do writing camps. I call it star camps and stuff where we can bring sort of what you're seeing online to the physical experience. And that's something that I'm passionate about, along with the sponsorship things. I know you do a lot of big charity work yourself. You're a big sponsor of, things that matter to you and your company. Well, the same thing for us is how do we take some of our profits and start, we have the Charlie Walk Foundation, which we just started to help less fortunate writers, artists to give them money to create content, visuals, or recordings so they compete. They have to compete. And if you don't have the money, sometimes you can't make the best recordings. You can't work with the best musicians. You can't get the best live show. You can't make a better video. So we're being thoughtful about those that are less fortunate, that don't have the opportunity. So, and I think you think the same way too. How do you, for me, look, in the music business, we're not curing cancer, but we're definitely helping. Music is something that is a healing tool for so many, and music is a universal language where everyone can sort of get behind an artist or song and be at that show. And when we're at a show, when you're at a Grateful Dead show, or when you saw Pink Floyd, if you ever did, or when I saw Fleetwood Mac, we're all kind of there together singing those songs as one, and that's beautiful. And it's the only form of art that today consistently allows for that to happen in community, and that's what we're doing with Music Mastery.
Okay, sounds great. So we're, 2019, about 20 years now, the internet has been just growing and growing and growing and making such differences in our lives. You had your predictions in the past. What's your prediction for the next 20 years? How does the internet, or just how does the artist look? How does the landscape look? Things are changing rapidly, right? So you see it every day. What's your prediction?
My prediction is you're going to see some of the companies that host artists actually start partnering with artists directly. You're going to see.
So like Google has
I
them
think Google.
play
I
at
think
their conference, that artist then become a sponsor of that artist.
I think Google could buy a music company or really go direct with artists more so than ever before, and offer them investment. I think Spotify will start
Does
doing
this
it.
start to look a little bit like the 1950s film industry, where Warner Brothers or MGM, the artists, the actors and actresses were on retainer. They lived on studio housing, and is it that what you're thinking of? Like they're all under a corporate sponsorship deal, where the corporate then owns the artist's work completely too?
No, I think there's two things that I see. I think artists have a choice to either three choices: to be independent and solely do it themselves and put their music up, fund themselves. They can be in a major label, or they're going to have the opportunity to be a partner with a DSP, a digital platform. When I say Google, I say Amazon, Spotify, Apple, they all want to have direct relationships with the artists.
There's definitely a content war out there.
And it's going to get crazier and crazier and crazier like you've never seen. I see it coming because everybody wants to own a piece of famous. And that's my line. Everybody wants to own a piece of fame at no cost. So if you're an artist out there today, and if you can create waves and be clever and be great, by the way, like, do you want to go to a show, and do you want to see a good show or a great show? I want to see a great show. I want to see a great artist. And if you can really sort of make sure that you're on the course to be great because you have the greatness inside you, why go and take money? Try to build your brand because you're clever, because you're great. And then what happens is you have all the options in front of you, and then you can make a decision. I think it's an amazing time to be an artist more than ever before. But again, there's only a few great artists. If you think about the history of music, there's been only a few breakthrough artists over the last few years. Is Drake a 15-year-old brand? Is Drake a 20-year-old brand? I don't even know. Let's do the math when he put his first record out. You think Rihanna's coming out with a Caribbean vibe album this year. She's been doing it for 16, 18 years maybe. It's an 18-year-old brand. You don't think of it that way. When you really think about these brands, Gaga, who's amazing, had her ups and downs, and A Star Is Born helped reinvent her by doing that movie it was the third time the movie was remade. It's a remake 3 times. And look what happened. It's incredible. But she's been plugging away for 15 years now? I mean, so a lot of these artists are older brands, and now with the internet and the way it's sort of streaming is a global game. When you put a song up on a Friday, it's the world. Anything can happen anywhere. I think you're going to see a lot of new artists break. But to answer your question, when I predict the future, I predict a very, very independent time for these artists.
So if you're a corporation and you're looking to sponsor an artist, you preferably want to get involved with an artist just like in a stock, when it's on its way up.
Sure.
And you have the ability to have an eye or an ear for that. What is that? What do you have? What do you look for? I know it's got to be so intangible, but what can you share with the listeners that they could help them have the gift you have?
Well, one of the gifts that
how'd you know Post Malone was going to be big? How'd you know The Weeknd was going to be big?
With Post Malone, we heard a song called White Iverson. It was blowing up on SoundCloud.
I love that song too, by the way.
And people liked it. It wasn't even like me saying it. We at the time signed it because we had data that said it was a smash.
It's not his best listened to song.
But it showed that people liked him early on, and I think that was a data-driven decision, to be honest. The Weeknd started off and was just breaking out of Toronto, and so much mystery behind his brand. And Trilogy, which is a collection of his mixtapes, just really solidified him as we got into working on the music and just helping him become the global stadium superstar that he is today. But then again, for me, I call it the 30-second rule. You can look an artist in the eye and feel and see whether they're stars or not. It's, you can, for me anyway, you can tell very, very quickly. I use my Instagram now to test music and test. I have a kid that's 12 and a half that's probably on his way to be the next young superstar. There's no one doing it now. Every time I post him, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 views. within 24 hours. You just know. You can see the cause and effect of what he does with that voice in his eyes connecting. I put up a song just with just was a picture of the audio spinning from the iPhone and no picture, and people just went crazy. So I put up other artists and nothing happens. So if nothing happens, nothing. I always say, if no one cares, no one cares. It's easy for me to like look and feel and then test. So that's gut before data.
That is a good question. When this artist is testing a new song,
Should get him up too.
The music video, and we've had these conversations that the better ones are usually raw, gritty, because the artist has more say in that. When they get the big record company, contract, then they go and hire this big producer, and it makes it more glossy. But the artist doesn't have usually as much say and the look and feel of that music video. When you see an artist load up that song with that video onto a YouTube or online, how much do you think the video matters and how much of it's the song? Does the video even matter at all? Can you just load it up with nothing, blank background, and really see just as much as if you've got the,
Well, we've seen in
music videos?
In Latin America, most of the music consumption's on YouTube.
So again,
In Latin America, most of the audio consumption is the videos on YouTube. Does that make sense? Just YouTube is the number one streaming product for music in Latin America. I just came from Puerto Rico. I saw it. Everyone's just...
But so for the artist, does the video matter?
Of course it does.
Just the song?
Yeah, if you're making a video that's irrelevant, doesn't matter. But if you're putting up something that really is disruptive, well, number one, affects commerce, money that you make, and number two, can be viral, and number three, distinctively shows the difference between you and somebody else. It just depends on the artist. Every case is different. There's not one specific rule, except when I look at our creative director Roger over there, who I'd love you. Is it okay?
Yeah.
When I think about Roger Rojas, who's our creative director, you can get into the difference between when you make content that engages and when content doesn't. And I think that's sort of like what you're saying. It does matter if it's great. If something happens, and if it's just sort of like boring or doesn't make you feel. Don't forget, like when you get engagement, something makes you feel. And when you don't, no one, when I see something, I just skip it. Like I skip a song, I skip a video, or I just shut the phone off. So. And I think Roger's a great example. He's our creative director at Music Mastery. Even the stuff that we put up, Roger, is it good enough? Does anyone care? We look at the engagement, and we're getting a sense of what people like of whatever I say, or a lot of the artists that we work with, and then some of the content that you're doing around the world. You become an expert in really deciding, what are the things we need to do to make people care? And isn't that the goal at the end of the day if you're an artist or you're a brand? If you're putting up snackable content that's 10 seconds or 15 seconds, short attention spans, what are you going to put up that's going to make someone either purchase that hotel room, right? And we don't have 2 minutes. We don't have a minute. We may not even have 30 seconds. We may have 15
seconds. You can make the
seconds.
argument that if it's popular, it's not great art because the general masses don't appreciate great art.
But you still have to get their attention, right?
I think the biggest thing, and Charlie brought that up, is relevancy. You spoke about music video and is it cool, is it not? I think visuals are the most important thing. People are consuming, how he said, YouTube more than anything else. So having that relevancy of who's in it, the beats of what's hot, what are people most listening to, understanding the audience. So when we put content out, it's more than just like, hey, we're not just shooting at a dartboard. It's understanding Charlie has 30 years of music experience. He knows what people, specifically artists, like or what they want and what the people want to hear. So it's educating, giving value of people, letting them know, hey, Charlie Walk saw this star do X, Y, and Z. You're someone who's starting out. Maybe they don't have the right attention, but you do have a microphone. You have an iPhone. It's being resourceful with what you have, and then using social media, which is free, distributing that on a consistent basis, showing who you are, and building that community. So that what we say following, it's people that watch you every single day. So what we do with close friends, you're inside Charlie's mind of what he's doing, what he's saying, and most importantly, the 30 years of experience of things that you can't read in a textbook. It's things that he lived with and went through, and he's putting it out there and sharing it with people. Hey, put this out, do it consistently, and most importantly, listen to your audience, get that feedback, because they're the ones that are going to ride with you from the beginning to the end. And once you build that following, they'll go with you all the way to the end.
Listen, even for what you do, it's an attention economy, and you're fighting for eyeballs, you're fighting for emotion, and you have to be sensitive to that, because if you're not, you end up either not selling enough hotel rooms, or even what we're doing, finding artists or creating that content that drives people to want to be a part of our community, if we're putting out crap. And so there has to be a certain taste level to everything that we do for what we're selling. And then that behind the paywall, when they get to your hotel room or get to see me speak, it better be great. Because then because if it's not great, whether they're going on Glassdoor or Yelp, they're going to just scream how crappy it was. And I'm really cognizant of that. And I think I'm harder on myself than anybody, because I want to be in the great business.
Setting reasonable expectations is a big
100%.
So, Roger, you look like a millennial. Are you a millennial?
Yeah.
I think he is, yeah. I'm trying to be like Roger.
Are you all about experiences?
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing you just said that, because his reference of the hotel, I think more than ever, people, they want to be a part of something. They want, in the world of social media, what I like to say, it's a highlight reel. It's deception. Yeah, it's the world you live in, but a little flashier with all the apps that we have to make it look nicer. 2, they want to experience something that they could share, that they could talk about, that they could, unite with their other friends. But, hey, did you see when I was at that concert and I was 2 seats away from Travis Scott? Yeah, I took a selfie. So it's that kind of experience / forever lasting memory that people could have and that they could share and then post and just do it all over again. So the experience for me is the most important thing, that people, they want to go through something and share it and talk about it. And that's just the world we live in. How you said earlier, talking about social media, is it good or is it bad?
So are you not going to have kids because you want to protect the environment? Because that's the other thing I heard about the millennials.
No, definitely not.
You're going to have kids?
Yeah, I want 5.
I heard that too.
I'm the 4.
You're evil.
Yeah, I know. I told my dad.
The
I was
trees are burning right now.
Yeah. I was the 4th kid, and I told my dad. He was definitely like crazy for that. And then my little brother was born. I was like, all right, now he's going crazy. But I just think it's just so important, for people to feel like they're a part of something, and then the experience that you cultivate with the community that you've built, they just never forget it. And then now in the world we live in, they're able to share it. So all that put together, I think, is so crucial with the growth of anything.
So what made you want to get into the digital music industry with Charlie?
Well, I really just started with my iPhone, photography, doing that, and it cultivated. I had a Gatorade internship. I toured up the East Coast from Miami all the way up to North Carolina, stopping in every major city. And at that point, I was going into my senior year of college, which was about 3.5 years ago now. And I realized that in the digital world we live in, if I don't stay adapted to it, it's just going to keep going. And when it went from sports to now with Charlie with music, having the relationship that we've been able to cultivate, and seeing that a lot of people now, especially in my world, they read a textbook and they'll sell a course or a program for triple the price with no experience. And the number one thing I've learned now is that experience is everything. So if you're able to get close to someone, aka for me, Charlie, with 30 years of experience,
because one thing Charlie knows is what won't work.
Correct.
And it's like this intangible wisdom that you can't get out of a textbook.
Exactly.
Just, a finger in the air to know, like, okay, that might have worked 5 years ago, but it's not going to work now, and this is why.
Yep. And it's not how he said it's his gut, because he's been through it and he's seen it. Mm-hmm. It's not a thought. It's not something he read from something else. It's something that he's been through. And so having someone like him in front and kind of leading the way, paving it for us, I think it's crucial. So like anyone that joins the program, it's not like me standing up there and telling you, hey, I started music a month ago and I'm going to tell you how to change your life and quote unquote be famous. No, I'm learning it and getting all the knowledge from someone that's seen it, that's been around the block many, many, many times with the biggest artists, and he saw something in people that other people couldn't.
I'm just trying for today, like I'm not walking down the street with the biggest artist in the world. I'm looking for the biggest artist in the world. And, And one of the things that I'm fascinated about, I was going to ask you this, is, what's happening in Latin America and how those artists are becoming the biggest in the world. Maluma, Bad Bunny, they're selling out arenas in the U.S. And I'm fascinated with it. And I believe the next biggest stars are actually in Latin America. We're going to go to Medellin in a few weeks. I think you're coming with me. And we have leads and some tips as to who's there. And we're going to go into bodegas and churches in the hood, and we're going to go find these kids, whether we create a group out of them or not. And that's inspired by what's happening in culture today. And also look at K-pop in the United States. These BTS, Blackpink. They're selling out arenas and stadiums. Citi Field here in New York, BTS sold out. They don't speak English. And that's what streaming and global cultural influence has done. And that's the good news for, I think, what we all do in moving culture appropriately and hunting and looking for the next. You can't look in the rearview mirror as to what's already happened. For me, I'm looking ahead to identify and be a part of and help the next biggest artists and people that just want to be in this business of music. I told you, as I said before, there's 50,000 songs a day being put out probably in a month from now, right? So that's 50,000 times 7, and then it's going to be hundreds of thousands of songs and artists trying to get attention, and at least we can do is give them a community and a place to sort of better themselves and be with other types of artists globally, and make sort of what we're doing, the journey. Be something that actually affects culture in a good way. Maybe they're on the phones less. Maybe it's a drive towards more of this physical type of thing.
Or it's a hybrid.
Well,
How many people are at the live events, like you saying, taking selfies, streaming the video, because they got to load it up and say, look, I was really here. I did it just there. I was in Madrid the other day for UEFA finals, and I missed the handball at the very beginning of the first 20 seconds of the game. It changed the entire game because Tottenham had a handball called against them in the box, and Liverpool scored the penalty. But why did I miss it? Because I was taking pictures. Because I just had to say, look, I'm here. I'm gonna take these pictures, and then I missed one of the most important points of the game. It's just the hybrid doesn't exactly work either, but it's a perfect example that we have to be there. Imagine Dragons opened for that. You had to take pictures because you had to record it. Maybe not so, because I didn't even load any of that up. I just wanted it in my memory bank when I go through my own phone and just like, oh yeah, I remember when I was there. So
and we all
part
do
of
it.
A personal diary of a way.
I think everyone does that. I'm definitely someone who does that as well. Charlie spoke earlier about being addicted to your phone. I'm definitely that person. You wake up, you go to bed, you're on it. Throughout the day, you're on it.
So why aren't we starting a tech rehab right now? They already have them in China.
I think we just started it. It's like you went to that soccer game, right?
Right.
Would you prefer to be at the game or watching it on your phone? You went to the game. We have issues. I think we need to start it. Let's start a foundation for it.
Detox retreat.
I mean, we were at dinner with my family tonight, and at some point there's 6 of us, and we're all just sort of like, the food came, and sort of like, and I'm like, what are we doing here? What's going on? What are we doing, guys? I think we all have to push for the shift of it. And I know when I'm done with this amazing interview, I'm going to, load up some social media stuff, capturing our moment here. And I have a dinner tonight, and hopefully I'll put my, I'm just trying to be more thoughtful, all of us, of maybe you put that device down a little bit more. But you're right, it's hybrid, it's a mixture of both, but it's caring a little bit more about, I think, the live experience for people today. Because what got me to where I am was the live experience. If you think about it, I don't think if I had a mobile device or social media during my rise or my journey and exploration of what I wanted to do, that I'd even be able to be sitting here with you today. So do you understand? I think it was actually you had to figure it out. And I think, the social media thing sort of puts like a glossy coat on BS, and I'm calling BS on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think with BS, I think that wraps it up, huh?
Yeah.
What do you think, Roger? You going to add to that?
I think, one more thing, kind of talking about social media, because even though we just finished with the negative, I think it's so important we speak about the positive.
Sure.
And the biggest positive is that, social media unites people. Social media gives you an opportunity to speak to people you probably would have never spoken to in other cities, other states. And then with music mastery, the biggest thing, it's giving you access. It's giving you access to creatives. It's giving you access to artists. It's giving you access to people knowing, hey, what's the type of music that people are creating in their rooms?
Oh, that's much more inspirational.
Yeah,
That's better than ending with BS.
Yeah. and then the biggest thing, it's, getting access to Charlie and his insight on a daily basis.
So it cuts through the BS and gives you access. I like that.
Well, I just think, it's the balance. I mean, I'm on it to inspire. I'm on it to give back. I'm on it to have a community that's global. And I think what we're saying also is it's managing time with your family and your friends and having that balance. But social media has clearly opened up, even for me personally, an amazing global community, which I never would have had by just being, a guy living in the United States. It's really opened up and changed people's lives, I believe, and they've changed mine. So it's super, super important. It's just we talk about the balance of it, and I think acknowledging the balance of it is very, very key.
Well, thank you. You're an icon. You're the real deal. This has been, a great session. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good man.